Hello and welcome back to another video. So in this video, I want to talk about what it means to have a knowledge management system, what smart notes are and why it's really important, where the Zettelkasten fits in. We'll even cover a little bit about what it means when we talk about second brain. But most importantly, I want to talk about why it's important for you. So for example, you might be a student learning something, you're getting a lot of information and you want to be able to study that in the best way possible. You might be a professional who's trying to skill up, who's trying to make improvements in terms of your career path. You might be an entrepreneur who wants to make the best use of, say, a content strategy, or being able to read books from other entrepreneurs and actually put that into real practice. And for me, I call myself an autodidact. This is someone who just loves learning, where you can pick up a book and you're just doing it for the curiosity that you have. And I recognized a few years ago that I really wanted to take that knowledge. I wanted to really understand. I wanted to be able to recall that knowledge, and I wanted to be able to share that knowledge. Hence why I do YouTube. I want to bring that into my blog, all these things. So that's sort of the journey. And then that led me down the path of what this knowledge management system is all about, and how to put it into practice. So I'm going to cover a few things. Let me just switch to this screen here. So these are my notes for today's video. So yeah, for me, I've been on this journey since 2016. I started listening to audiobooks, Audible in particular, and I fell in love with it. I started with the entrepreneurship type of books, and then I started picking up all sorts of personal development, spirituality, health, and basically my sphere of knowledge has grown, and my curiosity surface from that sphere now is even bigger. So the more you read, the more you learn, the more you get hungry for wanting to learn more. So that's kind of what it means to be an autodidact. So like, how do I gather my learning, and what have I done? So I used to listen to audiobooks. I used to listen to them in the car, particularly, so when I'm commuting. And I started picking up at the beginning of 2020, getting more into reading Kindle books. I was never a strong reader when I was a child. I was quite a slow reader. Not dyslexic or anything, but I just didn't engage with written words. I'm better now. Maybe it was what I was reading. But I started moving into Kindle books because I wanted to make notes on them. I wanted to be able to catch it. An audiobook when you're driving is really hard. It's really good for helping you absorb the essence of a piece of work, but to be able to put it into practice, I realized I wanted something better. So using Kindle, making notes, but then what do you do with the notes and things like that? That's where I kind of got to. And again, if it's like a blog post, like where do you make your notes on that? Do you do it on paper? Do you use a digital system? Like there's all these questions that I've come up against. So yeah, like the problems I've had, just remembering specifics. So listening to audiobooks for me has been good because it sort of changes my default position in a way that's better framed. So inherently, I know more what feels right. But to say specifically, oh, this is right because of this piece of information from this book or this study from there or whatever that is, that's really hard. I couldn't remember the specifics. I was terrible with things like remembering dates. I never took much interest in history at school because it's all, a lot of it in my experience was condensed down into, dates and facts and being able to remember stuff. I much prefer the sort of discussion topics around things, the thinking around things, which is less on the specifics and more on the essence of what it is. So I also want to write more. I want to share more. Part of my why is to help people like you on your journey. I've realized that for me, I'm not going to change the world, but if I can lay a brick in the foundation to enable others to change the world, I'll take that as a win. So my contribution back will transcend my lifetime, and I want to be a part of that foundation. So in order to do that, I need to help other people, help them with their journey, with their mindset, so that they can then kind of go on and make the world a better place that way. So in order to do that, I need to communicate, and that involves writing, it involves conversations, it involves, I love YouTube, so YouTube, but being able to recall the specifics so that I can create nice, concise. I'm not one that creates nice, concise videos. I like to discuss and evaluate and explore ideas. I want to be able to condense it down because that has value. So having all this sort of knowledge in it and perspective from books and just my own experience as well, being able to recall that in my work is really quite important. And I've found that really quite difficult. Where do you organize things? That's a tough one. There are lots of software out there, and we'll cover a bit of that later in the video. But when you've got an idea and you've only got your phone, or you've only got a pen and paper, or it's late at night, or you're at your computer, where do you put things so that it makes it, get it off your mind, but also so that it doesn't get lost? And just how you organize things, and again, removing friction. Classic one is you have a brilliant idea in the shower, but by the time you get out of the shower, the idea is gone. Sometimes I will try to capture ideas on my phone, but it's really clunky. There's friction to it. Not in the shower. I will do it when I get out of the shower. And then there's the habit. Doing things great for a week or 2 weeks or a month is good, but you need to do it consistently. As I want to build this YouTube channel, I need to do it consistently. As I want to build a blog, I want to do it consistently, because that's how you build momentum. There's a book, Atomic Habits, which basically just make incremental steps, and it compounds over time, and that is really, really important. So having the right systems in place so that you can do your reading, do your processing of that reading and writing and all of that. You don't do it all in one go, you break it down and you do it over time. So that's kind of where I'm at, or where I've come from in my journey. You can see the frustrations that I want to simplify some of this. I want to, the most important thing is that the information from a book gets used in a positive way and I can write from it. Everything else is it's just processed to get there. So let's talk about who. So I've sort of mentioned this at the beginning, but this is the ideas I'm talking about in this video are for the students. Maybe you're a developer and you're learning new programming languages. Maybe you're learning about systems, algorithms, technology. Maybe you're an entrepreneur and you're suddenly branching out in learning about how to raise money, or how to do marketing, or how to build a community, or how to talk to customers, or how to do user feedback. All these things require some level of, you have a gap in your skills and understanding and knowledge, and you want to bridge that gap. And that requires learning, and learning requires a process of which to learn in an efficient way. And of course, the autodidacts of the world, those who are just curious. I love the quote. Again, here's an example. I wish I could recall this quote, but it's the effect of, the cure for boredom is curiosity. There is no cure for curiosity. I love that because I'm just naturally curious, hence why I do what I do. So you're watching this video and you're thinking, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But what is it that you need? This is really for those who want to get a deeper understanding of a subject, something that's of interest, something that's beneficial. And when I refer to that, I refer to this concept of recall, not recognition. So let's use an example. Let's say you're a programmer and you're learning a piece of technology, let's say React programming, and you look at the tutorials and you think, this is great. I can understand that this is a component, this is what goes in it. I'm looking at the example, it makes sense. Fantastic. Now take that example away and put yourself in a seat where you've just got a blank sheet of paper and say, now go create something yourself. And you're like, what do I do? What do I do? You can recognize how something works when it's in front of you, but can you recall it from memory? And that that transition through the mastery of a skill is where you go from not needing the prompts to having it embodied where you can do things. Doesn't mean you can't look things up, but conceptually understanding what goes where so that you know the building blocks to put in. And if you're a programmer and you're just starting out, that could be really tough because you just haven't built up that memory muscle of well, not recognition, but understanding, familiarity that your brain can just tap into it and recall it. There's some great books on how the brain works, which really applies to this. Absolutely. It kind of really changed my perception of learning. It's about having enough recognition, going through the process that your brain actually naturally learns. It takes a few days for it to filter out something you've learned. So your learning curve will dip and then it'll get better. And like if you try something, maybe the next day you won't be as good, but the day after, because the brain learns through trial and error, and it's the things that work. And sleep plays a role in this. When you sleep, your brain does the filtering. It's figuring out what worked, what didn't, and keeping the things that worked and what didn't. And the more you do it, the strengthening of the brain, or the way the brain neurons can fire. And then you have the other thing, which is having multiple ways to recall. Like, we have so many memories in our brain, we don't remember them all at once, but it takes a prompt to recall that. And when you're learning something, the more that you can build pathways to recall it, it then gets easier, and then you can do it. If you can drive a car, it's a great example. Driving a car is really hard for the first time, but if you've been driving for 10 years, you don't even know you're doing it because your brain has adapted to that and it knows everything inherently. So you want to tap into that. So that was a bit of a digression there, but yes, those who want to recall information, this is for people who want to have a system to do it efficiently and over time, not just a one-time thing. It's not like reorganizing a cupboard and then it's done. No, it's something that naturally stays organized over time. And really, it not critical, but helps if you're someone who wants to create some kind of output as well. So maybe you want to do blogging, and I'll talk about why that's important. Or it could be YouTube, or maybe you want to write a book one day, or it could be anything. So if you want to create something out of that, and I will cover why that's really important. So what is the problem? Why does everybody not do this? Why is it the best kept secret in the note-taking space? It's because note-taking is very fragmented. Different people adopt different skills. We never really taught how to take notes at school other than told to take notes. Yes, there are some methods, the Cornell method and things like that. So you are taught some things, but you're not taught how to adapt that into your daily lives or into your career. It's usually how to study. And it's very fragmented. Some people use paper, some people use digital, some people use some kinds of software. But one of the common things that I've seen is that rarely do we go back through our notes. We're rarely, unless you're studying, if you're the professional or you're the programmer, you tend to use it as, if I need it, I'll look it up. And it's a note-taking system that has the bits organized that you look up. But what it doesn't really do then is prompt new thinking. It's only on a need-to-know basis. And realistically, a knowledge system should help you create new ideas, not just be a reference. It's not a reference. It should be part of your thinking tool set. So in my experience, I've observed that a lot of note-taking is sort of just like automatic archival. And yeah, it's pointless. In my opinion, it's pointless because unless you have a way to get that back out serendipitously, so that you're not forcing it, that actually things come to the surface sort of naturally at the right time, you'll lose a lot of information. It'll just get archived and you may never see it again. Organization can take a lot of conscious effort. Like, how do you put this? Where do you put this? Oh dear, I've sort of tweaked my system. Now I need to go reorganize everything. And it can be quite hard to keep on top of it. And it can slow you down and maybe even make you stop maintaining your knowledge system. yeah, like I said, you don't really know information. You just have a place where you can look it up. You know, if you could download the internet onto a floppy disk, is that of any use? Is an encyclopedia on a shelf any use unless you've read it and know how to access it at the right time, other than just always reaching for the book? Now, don't confuse this of needing to remember facts and figures and everything. It's not that. It is still looking things up, but it's having considered your thoughts on it so that it's in your language, in your understanding, and actually helps you with your understanding. We'll come onto that in a bit. Yeah, it doesn't convey understanding. So yeah, an encyclopedia of facts is great. It doesn't tell you whether it's beneficial. It doesn't tell you the pros and cons. It doesn't tell you the social impact. It doesn't tell you your experiences with it. So it doesn't convey any understanding. It's true or false in a way, rather than yeah, like one of the things that's quite important is to be able to hold contradictory ideas at the same time, where in one sense you believe this to be true, and then in another context you believe the alternative to be true, and it's really quite powerful to be able to evaluate that and understand when one is useful and the other is not, because if you have these contradictory ideas, it prompts new learning to figure out, well, is one of these invalid in my understanding, or is the problem more complex? If you have an archive of things, it's hard to create new ideas from it. If you create a document of, let's say, you've got something on exercise, and you create a document, it's just all your notes on exercise. It's really hard to just pull parts out of that without having to really consider the entire document, which can be quite overwhelming. So it's hard to adapt, hard to create new ideas, hard to spot patterns, essentially, when it's just archives of, like if you've got one document for all your notes on a book, it's probably not as useful because you can't easily get to the bit that was relevant in that book, because 99% might be talking about one topic, but 1% really hit home on some other aspect that it just really kind of was a bit mind-blowing. And unless you can pull that out in its own way, if it's buried in a book that 99% is just the notes on the book and the 1% is hidden, it doesn't help you create new ideas and use that. And categorization of things can be hard. We as humans love to categorize things. We love naming things. We name ourselves. We name our pets. We categorize everything and anything. But it's hard. Not everything fits in one category very neatly. If you're talking about, you know, diet and exercise, and you have something that talks about what diet is great for exercise, does it go into exercise or does it go under diet? Depends. So it's really hard to do that categorization. So that's why I don't like folder structures, is because that is very rigid. A file or a document can't be in more than one folder generally, so it gets complicated. There are ways around that, but at a principle, a rigid categorization can be hard to fit things into. Right, so I mentioned this before. Why create? Why do we want to create something when the whole point is that we're learning and that we're studying material and we are building our understanding of it? Why be a creator? I don't want to be a creator. I don't want to be a blogger. I don't want to be an influencer. Like that's not for me. But maybe that's an example of where I'm trying to say creating is good. Writing is one of those rare things that allows you to take the ideas in your head and communicate them to someone else, but also store them, that you don't have to keep thinking. But the act of writing also helps your brain think. Writing is thinking. It is not a record of your thoughts you already have. If I'm stuck on a problem, I start writing. I start creating text that helps me prompt the next thing I need to go to. You can't have like 5 thoughts at one time, so you have to go in a linear fashion. And because to consider an idea, you may end up going down all sorts of places and can be quite overwhelming. You write it down. Maybe a good example is mathematicians Like, it's very rare that someone can do complex maths in their head. Like, that is on the this is very unusual spectrum here. What we're talking about is like a mathematician will write down the formulas so they can jump around. So writing is really important. So you may be thinking note taking, and I do think that writing and publishing, and I'll come on to this when we talk about the Zettelkasten method, to publish and have other people read your text, maybe not even that, to publish something where you've actually considered it for yourself in the future, writing for your future self, is really important. To convey an idea that's quite succinct rather than fragmented is really quite important. So if you hadn't considered blogging in your learning journey, do consider it. There are other benefits as well, but just having a record and making it public is, it can be fun. It should be fine. Yes, unless there's some confidential things that you want to make notes on, maybe work related, and you can't talk about them. Fine, yeah, it won't be a public thing. But there is benefit to putting things out there that others can consume, and in a way, it can also be a way to give back. But by writing, by creating, you practice your craft. You hone your thoughts so that when you're talking about it to someone else, you have a more succinct. I started YouTubing in 2016. I did a daily vlog for 130 days. I've taken those videos, I've made them private at the moment because they don't really fit the channel. But one thing I really noticed that did was it helped me communicate easier. It built that recall so that when I was talking about something, it was just a lot easier to communicate. So it's really, really powerful to do that. But it also helps you find others like you, that you can find your tribe. And if you're an entrepreneur, that's really important, because if you're writing about things that your business is trying to solve, then you're finding your true fans, which could be your first customers. And that's really, really valuable. And of course, it opens up opportunities. The more that you show that you really understand something, the more that you show that you care about something, it attracts other people who also care about that, which could lead to opportunities. So it could lead to work opportunities. It could lead to, building up your network that can, it's keeping the door open so that when luck comes your way, you're ready for it, rather than having it all closed off. Okay, so we've delved a lot into that. But what is the solution? I was hinted on this. So really, what I'm saying is use a knowledge management system. We call those KMS, knowledge management system. There are more than one. My favorite is the Zettelkasten method, or we also call that Smart Notes. So there's a book that sort of changed my understanding of all of this, How to Take Smart Notes, by Sönke Ahrens. It took me about halfway through the book to finally have that aha moment, like, I get it. Now, this is a great book, and I want to do a proper book review on this on the channel coming up. I'm going through my notes at the moment from here, and I want to put that into a video to really dive in and discuss. Because if you read this book, one of the things that you'll find difficult is practical examples of how to put it into practice. Because I read it and I thought, I think I understand how to use this. Let's play with it. Let's try it out. I watched a few other YouTube videos, see how others interpreted it, and then sort of found my understanding of it, which I want to share, obviously, in this channel. If you look at other videos on my channel, there's examples where I dive into some of the techniques, how I've approached it. You may have a different set of techniques that work for you. That's fine. But really, this book talks about the Zettelkasten method and how you sort of approach going through the components of it. It doesn't really talk about digital note-taking. It makes a reference to it, but so some areas of it sort of not as valuable in digital note-taking, like how to physically organize your notes. With digital, you kind of don't have to worry about that. So that's how to take smart notes, which is the Zettelkasten methods. That's Nicholas Luhmann. He was a sociologist, I believe, who would go home from his work and read, but he devised this note-taking method called the Zettelkasten method. It's a German word meaning slip box, and the idea is that you take a card and you write one thing that can be comprehended on its own, and you organize it in the slip box, but where the value comes in and things are interconnected with other notes. And that's really, really quite valuable, because that's how you can take two things that look seemingly unrelated and have an aha moment, create a note with your thinking that joins the two together, create those connections via the referencing. And there you go. You've got something that nobody may have seen before or thought of. And that could be the essence of a blog post. Blogs weren't a thing in his day, but he did publish a lot of papers. He had something like over 90,000 notes in his system by the time he died. And it was so well organized and so well put together that others could create new published work from those notes alone, because his thinking was encapsulated in it. His insights were there and his references were there. So it's a really powerful method. I won't go into that in this video because it'll be 2 hours long by the time we finish, but certainly look out on the channel for where I have videos on the Zettelkasten method, and I want to delve more into that with really, once I do the book review, I want to go down into the tangible examples of that. So make sure you subscribe if that is what's of interest to you. Now, you may also come across the term second brain, and it's not the Zettelkasten method. It's another take on it. Forte Labs, Tiago Forte, I never remembered, has a premium course, and I say premium, multiple thousands of dollars, workshop around the second brain. It's really compelling. I'd love to do it if I was in a position to do that. And it takes a slightly different approach. The idea is that you're still using some kind of knowledge management system. And my understanding is that the key differences is that second brain is about using references, so sort of highlighting notes and kind of condensing that down into something small and using that in your second brain, whereas the Zettelkasten and Smart Notes is less about highlighting and copying and pasting, but taking a passage in a book that sparks your understanding, your idea. So what I do in my Kindle notes is I'll highlight something, and then I'll probably do it on my phone quite often, or the iPad, where I will just use the swipe keyboard and I will just write down why I think that's important, what I can relate it to that's elsewhere. And sometimes I'll read a passage and it will just say, this reminds me of X, completely unrelated to the book. I'll make a note of that, and I'm building a connection. And that's what I love about it, is because you can then have these original thoughts that are yours and yours alone from books that you're reading elsewhere. So yeah, watch out on the channel for more on those things. So yeah, hit that subscribe button if you're interested in that. Finding the right tools. So if you're looking at tools, pretty much the two questions you need to answer is, do you care more about privacy? Do you want to, in other words, all your notes are on your system, and security as well, and that you're not using a piece of software that is cloud hosted and could go away at any moment, right? So, and with that, you normally then have to figure out how to back up your notes, how to encrypt your notes if they go through some cloud sync or anything like that. Or you may want the convenience where you say, actually, do you know what? I trust someone else knows better how to manage my notes, in terms of keeping them available. I like the fact that I can just log into different machines and there they are. That's the convenience. I don't want to have to worry that, if my laptop burns down, that I lose all my data. I don't want that. The cloud's there for a reason. So you may have a preference on one of those. There's a thing called org mode. It's like an organizational method where essentially you do most of your work in plain text files. So you might use Markdown. So Obsidian is Markdown, and you can sort of do status. So using hashtags for status management and a bit of workflow around that. That's what org mode is. Great for, say, maybe the techies who like using the terminal command line, and they may have some kind of org mode way of interacting with their notes. And then on the flip side, you may just want the nice visual kind of what would be like the Evernote or the Apple Notes or something like that. I sort of sit between the two. I like being a little bit kind of low level, but I also like it looking pretty and visually what you see is what you get kind of thing. And then software-wise, you might choose, say, a desktop app like Obsidian, fantastic piece of software, plain text markdown, and has great ways of visualizing the connections between your notes. Works really well for, say, the second brain smart notes way of doing things, but the files are on your file system, and they've got a subscription service where you can sync it to different notes. I've not used that, and I'm not sure if their iPad smartphone app and that is ready, but it's an app, not web-based. Then you've got Roam Research, which is sort of like a interconnected outliner, so you can kind of create these big maps of. It's a cross between like brainstorming type of thing, where you've got these outlines and you've got subpoints, and you can link to other parts and things like that. So Roam Research has been very popular. There's some open source like clones of it, and if you're interested in exploring what they're like, drop a note in the comments, because I do want to go into that and do a kind of deep dive how you apply the Zettelkasten into these different tools. So it's giving you some idea of the tools. So if that's of interest, make sure you comment so that I know what's worthwhile putting in. And there's things like Notion. Yes, you've got OneNote. There's going to be loads of others. Evernote, Apple Notes. I like the Bear app on the Mac as well. So yeah, those are different tools. But really, the essence of what I'm trying to say here is having a knowledge management system helps you master your understanding, helps you recall that information. It helps you build a workflow so that you can do it consistently, so it compounds over time. And most importantly, then, if you're a creator, it gives you that foundation so that when you want to write a blog post, you are not starting from nothing. That you have lots of notes that you could say, let's outline this, and this. These are the notes that I've already considered, I've already evaluated, I've already got all the references there, I've got all my thinking there. So creating a blog post should be a case of essentially putting the words, putting the story for your audience together to help them comprehend and understand and enjoy the content. It's all that. Even that aspect I want to get more into as I refine it on my channel and my blog. I want to share those insights, how to write content that speaks and engages, the hook, the story arc, all those things, how you tie that into your brand. Yeah, and if you're an entrepreneur, you're building a personal brand, it's a great way to build authority. It's a great way to document your understanding and find your true fans. And that's really, really important, because then once you have that audience and you want to then take it to the next level where you actually want to give back and build a business around it, they're primed, they're ready, they trust you. And for the astute viewers here, this is what I'm doing on my channel here, because essentially, what am I working on? So what you've been looking at on screen is the app that I'm building. It's called Flowtelic. And the idea here is that it's to help you study, learn, think, write, and publish with maximum efficiency and consistency. Yes, it's in the early days. I'm looking for the true fans who kind of agree and like this knowledge management system approach. Yes, there are other tools out there. I came to the conclusion that actually the biggest value for me isn't about having the best knowledge management system, having the best. It's about, am I publishing content that's helping other people consistently? And when you ask that question, you then realize that you've got to have the best way of writing content and going through the process, the draft. You've got to go through the best way of knowing that you've done your thinking, that you understand what you're talking about, that you've got the experience, the authority to do that. You have to learn from content, and to do that, you have to have a method of study. So Flowtelic the big vision is that it takes you through that, but you don't do it like start here and go all the way through for each blog post. You do a bit here, a bit here. So what you're writing about might be the things you studied 3-6 months ago, but now's the right time where you want to get it out there. You sort of percolated the content and it's ready to surface. And one of the key things that that this product has is this focus mode. I love deep work. I love the idea of switching off and focusing on one thing at a time. And focus mode for me looks like this. You know, it's a recommendation. I should be studying 15 minutes a day. I've got 118 notes to study. If I go into that, it'll show me maybe where I've captured a YouTube link or a blog post. I can do a reader mode in it. If I click that, what's on my top? So latest one, you know, could mitochondria be the key to a healthy brain? There seems like a really interesting article. So what I would do here is I would then I click this link, I open the preview. Most times it can get the readability mode. If it's YouTube, I'll put that on the side, or a Vimeo, but some websites don't like this coming in, but if it does, it allows me to go in and I can just make my notes in here. Once I've done that, I can say that this is now ready to process. Okay, so once I've done my studying, I can then move into organizing those notes, where what I'm essentially doing is I'm taking those notes, it gets pinned to the right, and I can place them into existing cards, create new cards, create the relationships between them, building up my permanent notes in the archive, which is a Zettelkasten sort of way of doing things. So the idea is I've got my study notes, I move them into the archive. I might just have a random idea, I capture that, and I want to organize my ideas, organize my study notes, and then I may have projects. And projects for me is creating a YouTube video, writing a blog post. What notes do I want to reference, and then start writing, and then create your project notes out of that. The product I want to make really slick. I want to make it really efficient. I want to get it, you know, fine-tuned, because I desperately want to use this in terms of the work that I do. And having the capability to obviously build the product, I'm very fortunate in that sense. It's rough around the edges at the moment, for sure, but the components there, to the point that, as you can tell, that I can use it. Therefore, you know, in some way, others can use it. And you know, where we're at the moment is there will be a subscription service for it, for the cloud syncing, to be able to customize your workflows, all those things. But I do very much want a desktop and a web app to be free for anyone who wants to study and get into it. And when a need comes to kind of, actually, this is quite serious in my life, then that's when you'll hopefully make the jump to the subscription and get all those cool extra features, things like encrypted notes as well. Because going back to what I said about privacy, I get it. It's a cloud service. Privacy is really important. So having encryption, so if the database ever, God forbid, ever ended up compromised, that whoever's looking at that can't see your notes. I'll be covering more of how I approach that when the feature's sort of near ready. But also convenience, you know, just jumping on, create a note. And so this is a long roadmap. Make no mistake. I'm looking for the true fans who love the idea of this. So what I recommend, if this is of interest to you, in the link in the description, there's join.flowtelic.com. I call it a waitlist. It's basically keeps you updated with the progress of the app. But more importantly, you can play with this today. It's at the time of recording of this video, everything's stored local first. So it's all in your browser. I don't see your notes. There's no account. You don't sign up. That's why you want to do the email, so that I can keep you updated. But essentially, you'll get the link to the app. It's all stored in your local browser. Yes, until the sync happens, you can't log into another machine and pick up your notes. But what you can do is you can right click, you can export these to Markdown. So those notes are yours. They will always be yours. If you do that, it'll create a zip file with those notes in it. And if you wanted to then recreate that, you can create a collection and just drag those notes back in, and it'll re-import them. Keeping all the workflow. So if you've got things marked as, you know, it's a project and it's got a status, then it'll keep that in there. You can look at the Markdown files and get a feel for what goes on. And yeah, some things that I want to do in the future is, you know, one of the ideas is Obsidian is a note-taking app. that is, local first, use the file system. When I have the desktop app, I would love to be able to work on top of Obsidian, so I can use the same files, bring some workflow, bring the focus mode in, do all the cool things, sync those across. Wouldn't it be great if you could log into Flowtelic on another machine and edit your Obsidian notes? That would be awesome. So I'm not making any promises that's how it's going to end up, obviously, because there's a lot to do. But that's the level of thinking that I'm at. And then, the editor itself is going to be worked on way more to make that really robust, more feature-rich, images, support, things like that. But do join the journey. It's fun. And my goal here is to obviously build this app, make it work, make it profitable, build a business around it. But I also want to help you guys. I want to help you take your knowledge and do something really great with it. And whether that's using my app, Flowtelic, or using another product, I don't mind. It's as long as I'm helping. So that is it for this video. So yeah, make sure you subscribe, like, drop a comment of what you want to see in upcoming videos, and join the waitlist, join.flowtelic.com. Thank you very much.